I retired on a Friday afternoon in October, and by Sunday I was already making mistakes that would take me years to understand. Not big mistakes, nothing dramatic. No single moment I can point to and say that is where it went wrong. Just quiet, gradual mistakes that piled up so slowly I did not even see them happening. And by the time I did, some of them had already cost me things I could not get back. I am 85 years old now. I have been retired for 20 years. And I want to sit with you today and tell you what I wish someone had told me on that Friday afternoon before I walked out the door for the last time. Because if you are just retiring, or if you retired recently, the decisions you make in the next few months matter more than almost anything else you will do in the years ahead. Not the financial decisions. I know everyone talks about the financial decisions. I am talking about something different. I am talking about the decisions that determine whether you are still living in your own home at 80, still sharp, still connected, still yourself, or whether you end up somewhere you did not choose, dependent on people in ways you never wanted to be. Stay with me today, because I am going to walk you through 8 specific things, 8 things I either did or wish I had done in the first weeks and months of retirement. And one of them is something almost nobody talks about, something that sounds almost too simple, but that I believe more than almost anything else determines how the next 20 years go. I will get there. Just stay with me. Let me start at the beginning. The first thing is to make a real decision about your home before retirement forces one on you. Most of us retire in the house we have been living in. Maybe the kids grew up there. Maybe you have been there 20 years or 30 years. You know every corner of it. It feels like safety. And I am not telling you to leave it. I am telling you to look at it honestly. Right now, while you have the energy and the clarity and the financial flexibility to make a real choice. Not in 3 years when your knees are worse and the stairs have become a daily negotiation. Not in 5 years when something happens and your children are suddenly involved in a decision that should have been yours. Walk through your home and ask yourself one question about every part of it. Will this still work for me if things gradually get harder? The stairs between the bedroom and the kitchen, the bathtub you have to step over, the yard that needs constant maintenance, the location that requires a car to reach absolutely anything. My friend Walter retired at 66 into a beautiful 3-story home where he and his wife had raised 4 children. He loved that house, could not imagine leaving it. By 74, his knees made the stairs a real problem. By 78, his wife needed a walker, and the layout made everything harder than it needed to be. They moved at 79, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And moving at 79, under pressure, is a completely different experience than moving at 68, on your own terms, into exactly the right place. You do not have to move, but you owe yourself an honest look right now. What would make this home work better as you age? What would make it work for 20 more years? A grab bar here, a bedroom on the main floor, a different neighborhood with a pharmacy you can walk to. These are questions worth asking today, while you can answer them on your own terms. The second thing is to build your medical team before you need it urgently. I know that sounds backwards. We find doctors when we are sick. But retirement is the moment to take stock of who is actually in your corner medically, and to fill the gaps before a crisis fills them for you. Do you have a primary care doctor you trust and can actually talk to? Not just a name on an insurance card, someone who knows you, who listens, who you feel comfortable calling when something is not quite right. If you do not, finding that person now is one of the most valuable things you can do. A woman at my senior center named Margaret waited until she had a serious health scare at 72 to try to establish care with a new doctor. She called practice after practice and was told they were not taking new patients. She ended up in an urgent care clinic with a stranger looking at her chart for the first time during a moment that was genuinely frightening. She told me afterward, "I never thought finding a doctor would be hard. I thought you just called and made an appointment." It does not always work that way anymore. The time to find your team is when you are not in crisis. Your primary care doctor, your eye doctor, your dentist, a cardiologist if you have any history there. Know who they are. Have your appointment scheduled. Be a patient they know, not a stranger who calls in an emergency. And while you are doing this, do one more thing. Bring someone you trust to at least one appointment, a spouse, an adult child, a close friend. Let them meet your doctor. Let the doctor know who to call. That connection, established ahead of time, can make an enormous difference if something happens and you need someone to speak for you. The third thing is to get your paperwork in order. All of it, right now. I say this gently because I know it is the thing people put off most. Nobody wants to sit down and think about what happens if they cannot make their own decisions anymore. It feels like inviting something bad in. Like if you do not write it down, it will not happen. But here is the truth I have lived long enough to know. It is going to happen to all of us in some form. Not necessarily something catastrophic, just a surgery where you are under anesthesia and someone needs to make a call. Just a hospitalization where decisions come fast and your family is standing in a hallway, not knowing what you would want. The documents you need are not complicated. A will, if you do not already have one. A durable power of attorney, which is a document that names someone to handle your finances if you cannot. A healthcare proxy, or healthcare power of attorney, which names someone to make medical decisions for you if you cannot make them yourself. And an advance directive, or living will, which tells doctors what kind of care you do and do not want in serious situations. These documents take a few hours to set up with an attorney. Some can be done without one. And once they are done, you can put them away and not think about them again, knowing that if something happens, your wishes are on paper, and someone you trust is empowered to carry them out. My neighbor Frances put this off for years. She always said, "I will get to it." She had a stroke at 77. She recovered, thank God, but during those first frightening weeks, her 3 children disagreed about her care in ways that caused real damage to their relationships and added tremendous stress to an already terrible time. She told me later that the hardest part of recovering was knowing her children had fought like that. All of it could have been avoided if her wishes had been written down. Do not leave your family guessing. It is one of the kindest things you can do for the people who love you. The fourth thing is to redesign your days on purpose. This one surprised me. I did not expect it to matter as much as it did. But retirement removes the structure that has organized your entire adult life. And if you do not replace that structure intentionally, something happens that I have watched happen to too many people. You drift, slowly at first. You sleep a little later. You let days blur together. You stop having reasons to get dressed by a certain time, or be somewhere at a certain time, or talk to people at a certain time. And that drift, which feels like freedom in the beginning, starts to feel like something else after a while, something heavier. My husband George retired 6 months before I did. He had been an engineer for 38 years, precise man, purposeful man. And within 4 months of retirement, he was spending most of his mornings in his recliner, watching television in a way that was not like him at all. He was not unhappy exactly, but he was not himself either. I watched him, and I made myself a promise before I retired that I would not let that happen to me. I sat down in my last week of work, and I designed a weekly structure, not rigid, not every hour planned, but anchors, things on certain days at certain times that got me up, got me dressed, got me out the door or on the phone or engaged with something real. Your anchors will be different from mine. Maybe it is a morning walk every day at 8, a weekly volunteer shift, a standing lunch with a friend, a class, a club, a part-time job if that suits you. It does not matter what the anchors are. It matters that they exist and that they are real commitments, things you would feel the absence of if they disappeared. Structure is not the opposite of freedom. It is what freedom rests on. Without it, the days go soft, and the years go faster than you can imagine. The fifth thing is to invest seriously in your physical strength. Right now, at the start of retirement, when your body still responds well. I am not talking about running marathons. I am talking about the kind of strength and balance that keeps you on your feet at 80. The kind that determines whether a stumble becomes a fall, and whether a fall becomes a catastrophe. Balance and strength do not just fade on their own. They fade faster when we stop using them. And retirement, with its gentler pace, its less walking, its more sitting, accelerates that process if you are not paying attention. Find something you will actually do. Not something you think you should do. something you will genuinely do 3 or 4 times a week. Walking is real exercise, and do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Chair yoga is real exercise. Swimming is real exercise. A simple set of gentle strength exercises done at home 3 times a week can make a significant difference in how steady you are on your feet at 75 and 80. My doctor told me once that the single strongest predictor of whether an older adult can continue living independently is not their heart health or their cognitive health. It is their physical strength and balance. It is whether they can get up off the floor if they go down. It is whether they can carry their groceries and climb their own stairs and catch themselves if they trip. That capacity does not maintain itself. You have to tend to it. And retirement is the perfect moment to build habits around it, before the years have taken more than they need to. The 6th thing is to simplify your finances in ways that protect you from your own future self. I do not mean this unkindly. I mean it as someone who has watched very sharp people become gradually less sharp and suffer real financial harm because their finances were too complicated to manage easily. Retirement is the time to consolidate, to automate, to simplify. Combine accounts where you can. Set up automatic payments for bills so that a bad week or a foggy month does not mean a missed payment. Make sure someone you trust knows where everything is, what accounts exist, what comes in and what goes out. And revisit who has access, not to take control away from yourself, but to make sure that if something happened tomorrow, the right person could step in and nothing would fall through the cracks. A man I knew named Herbert had 11 different financial accounts when he retired, spread across 4 institutions, accumulated over 40 years of working life. He knew where everything was. He managed it all himself with no trouble. At 81, his memory started to slip. Not dramatically, just enough that keeping track of 11 accounts became genuinely hard. Things got missed. One account sat untouched so long, the institution started asking questions. His son spent the better part of a year untangling it all. Herbert was not careless. He was just a man who had never simplified something that felt fine as it was. Simplify it while it is fine. Do not wait until it is not. The 7th thing is to make one honest decision about driving and transportation. I know, nobody wants to hear this one. Driving is independence. Driving is freedom. Driving is being the one in charge of where you go and when you go there. I understand that completely because I felt it too. But I also watched what happened to my friend Evelyn, who I have talked about before, who quietly stopped driving and then quietly stopped going places and then quietly became someone she had not intended to become. The loss of driving does not have to mean the loss of everything it provided, but it will if you do not plan ahead. Start now, while driving is not a problem, to build other ways of getting where you need to go. Learn how the ride services work in your area. Find out if your community has a senior transportation program, because many do, and they are often free or very low cost. Identify a few people in your life, friends or neighbors or adult children, who you could ask for a ride when you needed one without feeling like it was an imposition. And have an honest conversation with yourself right now about what would tell you it was time to limit your driving, not what someone else would have to tell you, what you yourself would recognize. Having that conversation with yourself now, when it is purely hypothetical, is completely different from having it in the moment when something has already happened. Planning for the day you stop driving is not giving up. It is making sure that day, whenever it comes, does not take your whole life with it. The 8th thing is the one I promised you, the one that sounds almost too simple, the one I believe matters more than almost anything else. Stay known. Let me explain what I mean by that. One of the quietest ways people lose their independence is by becoming unknown, by becoming someone no one is checking on, someone who has drifted out of other people's awareness so gradually that nobody notices when things start to go wrong. And this happens more easily than you would think, especially in retirement, when the daily structure that kept you visible, the workplace, the colleagues, the routine, is suddenly gone. Being known means having people in your life who would notice if you disappeared for a week, who would call if they had not heard from you, who know enough about your life and your health and your situation to recognize when something was not right. It means having relationships that are real and current and reciprocal, not just family who love you from a distance. People who are actually in your days. A neighbor who you talk to regularly. A friend you have coffee with. A group of any kind that expects to see you and would ask about you if you were not there. When I was 73, I went through a period after a health scare where I pulled back from almost everything. I told myself I needed rest. I told myself I would re-emerge when I felt better. What I was really doing was disappearing. And it took my friend Louise, who showed up at my door one Wednesday afternoon because she had not heard from me in 2 weeks, to show me what I was doing to myself. She sat across from me at my kitchen table and she said, "You are not resting, you are hiding." And I knew she was right. The people who age the best are not always the healthiest or the wealthiest or the most organized. They are the most connected. They are known by people who care. They are woven into something larger than their own four walls. And when something starts to go wrong for them, someone notices early, when there is still time to do something about it. You cannot buy that. You cannot arrange it at the last minute. You have to build it and tend it over years. And retirement is the moment to decide, intentionally and clearly, that staying known is a priority, that you will not drift, that you will show up even when it is easier not to, that the people in your life will know you, the real you, the current you, well enough to notice when something is not right. That is the thing. Stay known. Let people in. Not because you need rescuing, because connection is what makes independence possible in the first place. I am 85 years old, and I still live in my own home. I have my paperwork in order. I have a doctor I trust. I have simplified my life in ways that protect me. I have people around me who would notice if I went quiet. And I wake up every morning in my own bed and make my own coffee and live my own life. That did not happen by accident. It happened because when I retired, I started making decisions, not all of them perfectly, but intentionally, with the next 20 years in mind. You have that same chance right now. The beginning of retirement is not the end of something. It is the setup for everything that comes after. And what you do in these first months matters in ways you will not fully understand for years. Do not drift. Decide. If today's conversation meant something to you, please subscribe. Every week I bring you something real, learned from 85 years of living, and I want you to be there for it. And here is my question for you in the comments today. Of these 8 things, which one do you know in your heart you need to focus on most right now? Just one. Be honest with yourself. Write it down. Because sometimes naming it is the thing that finally makes it real. I read every comment. And you are not alone in any of this.